So hi, welcome back. Welcome back to the digital world being with me. It's for me, it's a lazy, I guess, what is it, Thursday evening. I've been spending some time with my daughter. And my check-in is that I'm back from the desert. I went to Burning Man a couple weeks ago, and it was challenging with a 10-month-old. Um, taking a 10-month-old camping is bad enough, but taking her to the desert where it's really dusty and everything. Here's my quick screenshot of her actually sleeping, one of the rare moments she was sleeping. No, this is fine. But I feel good and I feel rested, and I'm just curious to hear from you all. How are you doing? Let's do a mini check-in, a mini digital check-in, just a few words about how you're feeling and what you're up against, what you're dealing with. And just feel free to type in the chat box. I'll read them aloud with your permission. Colleen says, good, but buried under essays. I hope they're interesting essays, Colleen. Other folks, how are you doing? What's present in your world? Amy says, feeling overwhelmed with students who are coming at the last minute. Seniors. I hear you. I'm feeling some of that myself, Amy, feeling like a flood of students. It's great to be busy, but it can be a lot. Yasmin says, good, but busy with school. Yeah, totally hear you. For those of you who, and you'll see some of you will see, I've got 6 essays on the doc here. Take a look and see if yours is up here. Question for you, those of you who shared essays, would you prefer that I use your name or not your name, or just your initials? And you'll see who you are. I've either got the counselor's initials or the student's initials at the top. Let me know what you would prefer. We're going to get started here in just a minute. I'm just going to wait one more minute. Let folks check in and see if anybody else shows up before we jump right in. And we're going to try and get through 6 essays in about an hour. And we'll have questions along the way, certainly. Yasmin says she doesn't mind if we use her name. Cool. So I'm just going to, Yasmin, your essay is first, right? Cool. Thanks, Donna. Cool. I'm just going to call it Yasmin's essay. It's nice when it's personal. So heads up, everybody. This person is actually here. so watch out. No, I'm kidding. Okay. So some of you are on the dock as anonymous krakens, and different animals, and if Jalen is logged in as a person, Yasmin's logged in as a person, Rachel's logged in as a person. If you look on that Google Doc, you'll see there's a little chat box where we can chat to each other just by clicking the little chat box. And mine is unavailable right now because of my darn internet. But we should be able to chat to each other. So feel free to chat on there if you want to say something to the whole group. And you can also insert comments. Like I could say, in the quiet small town of Winthrop, I could say, I like this part. And I insert a little comment. And the way you do that is you go up to where it says insert, you drag down to comment, or you can use the shortcut. For me, the shortcut is this little squiggly sign, Option, and M. So that allows us to make comments. And if you've got a name there, and if you don't have your name, I sent an email to everybody with this essay. Try logging in from that link, and you should be able to make comments. If not, you can just send me comments through the regular chat box. Okay, so let's jump right in here. And I want everybody to serve as, as counselors in this. This is not just, let's watch Ethan critique some essays, but let's do it together, and let's see what we can learn together and learn from each other, and see if we can help these students take their essays to the next level, or help the counselors take the students' essays to the next level. Or sorry, I should say help the counselors help the students take their essays to the next level. So here's Yasmin's essay, and Yasmin, if we were working together, I would probably just read the essay aloud with you. And the prompt that I really like, and I don't know if you wrote with this in mind, is describe the world you come from, and tell us how your world. Tell me if this is what you actually wrote for Yasmin, has shaped your dreams and aspirations. It's my favorite prompt because I think it tells us the most about someone. So here's the essay. Let's just listen to it together. And by the way, I haven't looked at any of these essays ahead of time. I just copied and pasted them, so we're all in the same boat. In the quiet small town of Winthrop, the park was near the pizza parlor, and the pizza parlor was near the school, and the school was near many stores and boutiques. Yasmin says, honestly, I just wrote the essay without really applying a specific question. Cool. Okay. Everyone was friends with each other. In my cozy apartment, I had my own spacious room. It was my ideal home, which could never be found in another town, ever. Um, I'm loving the lyrical quality of this. It sounds like a beautiful short story, so I'm just going to make a note of that. My family originated from Pakistan. They all resided in Pakistan. I was very lucky to be growing up in the United States, where I benefited from opportunities that my cousins in Pakistan didn't have. So what? Why did I have to move from my home? Well, in order for my cousins to get the excellent education and safety I had here, my gigantic family decided to immigrate to the United States. But my tiny apartment couldn't withstand my huge family. Great. So she's introducing the problem of the conflict here early on in the second paragraph, which is nice. Wakefield, my new town, was the total opposite of Winthrop. Everything was downtown, including my new school. If you didn't live near downtown, which I didn't, then you were no fun. You were near no fun. No parks, no pizza parlors, no schools, and no stores. I didn't know anyone in Wakefield or whether I'd be able to adjust to the town. Since my house was right next to the highway, it was very noisy, and sleeping at night was difficult. Although I had my own room, it was much smaller than the one in my apartment, and it could only fit one bed in the drawer. All I knew was that Wakefield would be nothing like Winthrop. It never could be. So I noticed we're being introduced to some challenges. No fun, noisy. Sleeping at night was tough. So, some difficulties of moving. As I looked around at my classmates on the first day of school, I recognized no one, another challenge. But everyone knew I was the new kid. Being the new kid was tough. I had no one to talk to and no one I was comfortable with. I told myself friends were easy to make, but when I sat down and said hi to the boy sitting next to me, he gave me a spine-tingling look that tore apart my soul. But I'm not a shy person. When the teacher, Mr. O'Terry, took attendance and pronounced my name how it was spelled, I corrected him and told him it was pronounced Shanila, even though there is no H in my name. My classmates all snickered and repeated my name incorrectly over and over. I couldn't help but flare up and turn red. Interrupted by the bell, we went to class. Lunch came around and I still hadn't made any friends. After observing the lunchroom in hopes to find someone who looked inviting, I sat down with a group of girls. The boys next to us just couldn't accept the fact that I looked different, so they bullied me. Although the boys copied my actions and called me foreign, I didn't let them bother me. Now I have many friends in Wakefield. And downtown doesn't seem so far anymore. The highway next to my house also doesn't seem so noisy like it used to. If I didn't move to Wakefield, I'd never have met the kind-hearted friends I have today. And for that, I'm grateful. Moving has turned out to be a positive change in my life. And because of this, I no longer fear change. Instead, I bring change when necessary. After hearing many of my colleagues and teachers' wishes about a way to talk about their wants when it comes to academic offerings at our school, I started and now lead the Academic Advisory Council. This council allows students and teachers to have a voice in the classes they're taking. Students and teachers can also work to add courses offered at our school. For example, French students were upset there wasn't an AP French class. After working with administration, the council was able to add an AP French class. The council also has other positive effects in the academic environment at our school. And let me know, Shanila, if that's the end of it, if it got cut off, because I'm wondering if there's a little ending that might be there. I don't know if I maybe incorrectly copied and pasted it. Oh, that is the end. Okay, cool. Thanks for letting me know. Okay, so let's do a really quick version of how I work with a student, Shanila. And I just want to ask, what are the pros and what are the cons? What do you like about it? What do you not like about it? And everybody else can chime in with what are some things you like about it. Let's start with the pros. So we're asking Shanila to talk about it. She likes the person. Anyone feel free to type either in the chat box on the webinar, it flows beautifully. The chat box on the doc. What do we like about this essay? What else? What else do we like about it? This ending is the beginning is so beautiful. There was a pizza parlor. Pizza parlors near the school, and the schools and many stores and boutiques. God, it sounds like Ernest Hemingway. Everyone was friends with each other, and my cozy apartment and fish was ideal home, which could never be found in a big town ever. It's just amazing. I mean, it's really not quite like any essay I've read. My family originated from Pakistan. What else do we like about it? Anything else from anybody? I don't want to spend too much time on every essay. I want to spend about 10 minutes. We've got about 4 minutes left on this essay. So quick, what do we like about it? I like the challenges set up here at the start of the essay. We've got a clear, challenge to move. Anything else? Okay. I'm not hearing anything else. Colleen says, I like her bravery. And now she tells us about her challenges. Great. So what do we think needs work? Shanila or anybody? How can we improve this essay? Shanila says the ending. I ran out of words since there's a word limit. Colleen says, I'd like to understand more about how things got better. Yeah, right around in here, I think. So one tip I give, Shanila, in terms of running out of words, like go to the end of the story, keep going, keep telling, because it could turn out that some of the best stuff is yet to come. and just shutting yourself off in terms of the word limit. We might miss out on some of the best stuff. Amy says, I don't know where the transitional moment is. Yeah, same here. It's kind of a similar comment. Is what happened? So we had the status quo, which was I didn't have friends. I'd moved here. Sleeping at night was difficult. So we've got some challenges. Sleeping at night was difficult. It was noisy. Basically all these things around adjusting. I was the new kid, and there's some cultural differences. Classmates all snickering. Lunch game, no friends. Still didn't have any friends. So they bullied me. And then all of a sudden, now I have many friends. And my question, and yet Jen is asking the same thing, how does she finally make friends? Maybe that's a transitional moment. Yeah, I feel like we're missing the middle of the essay. So we've got the beginning, and here's what I'd suggest. So let me just be really directive. I wouldn't normally go so directive, but I think we need to cut this. I think that the turning point needs to happen a little bit sooner. So what I'm going to suggest is that all this is part one of the essay, and we cut it down to about, let's say, which is about the third waypoint. So let's say if we're going to say 650 words, let's make this about 225 words. And if it feels too annoying to have the whole thing highlighted, let's say 225 words for all this stuff. Okay. And so we're going to give a budget. And then I still don't have any friends. So this is like 225 words. We'll call this the challenges. This is establishing the challenges. Okay. And then I think the important point, and I think the part that's going to get you into college is this part right in here. 225 words, let's say, what I did about it. And this will be like the values developed. This is going to be super, super important. And then at the end here, we've got that little, about 200 words, what I learned. Okay, and how I changed. So essentially what I'm suggesting here is that there's some stuff missing in here. So what this means, if this first part here is going to have to get trimmed, right now it's about 473 words. And even though I really like this opening stuff, it's only going to work if it's scoring points. And by scoring points, what I mean is if it's clearly setting up to express values that are going to be of use in the college experience or beyond. Some of this stuff in here could actually be moved into the what have I done about it? If we had more time, I would ask you, what could we move into the second section? So, we'll call this first section the challenges section, 225 words. And this is what I normally do with my students, by the way, for those interested, is I give them like a little word budget. And then I say, you can veer from this some, but this helps to sort of map out where on a page it's supposed to be. And then, and this is about 200 words. Okay, so some of the stuff, what I did about it, is in here. Like I started and now lead an academic advisory council. And for example, French, like all of this stuff could go in part two. Okay. So the ending, what I'm interested in is what have you learned through the experiences? How have you metabolized these? How have they made you a better person? And part of that will come once you've articulated all the stuff that you did about it. So one of the things you did about it was the Academic Advisory Council. But if you look back, Shanila, all of the challenges that you set up, we need to find some way to resolve them. So it doesn't have to be perfect. Like maybe sleeping at night is still difficult, but you acknowledge that because you set up a conflict here. My classmates all snicker. Do they still snicker or not? Like what's shifted there? You solved this one. Great, that one's solved. But do they still bully? So all of these problems that you set up, these are called setups, and we need a payoff. So I'm just going to write setup. It's almost like, Chekhov once said that if there's a gun on the mantle in Act 1, it better go off by Act 3. So you've got these little guns on the mantle, these little problems, and we need to somehow end these stories. Come back to, it's almost like, anyway, you get the idea. If we set something up, we need to pay it off. We got to come back to it later. Otherwise, we have these kind of loose threads, and we leave ourselves wondering at the end, like, what happened? Like, all these questions are in our head. So make sure that everything that I'm bolding in there, that you answer that somehow, at the end, that we come back to that. And there's probably a lot more that we could talk about, Shanila, about this middle section about what you did and the values developed. And I'll give you a tip. Check out the values exercise. because you're going to find all kinds of information and all kinds of ideas just based on brainstorming that. What are some unexpected values that you developed? Like, how did you learn the value of creativity, or listening, or diversity, or the aesthetic appreciation of beauty? Like, what did you learn through this experience? That's what's going to make the ending. The more specific you are in part 2, the more interesting part 3 is going to be. Okay? So those are my thoughts. Do you have any questions, Janila, or any final thoughts from anybody else? Okay. She says, thanks for all your help, everyone. Okay. This is kind of weird, I know, because it's kind of like speed counseling, and we're doing it by group. So I hope this is useful to you. Okay. And I'd love to hear from people. Would you rather do this kind of slow method of like asking for everyone's input, or would you rather that I do more of the talking, or kind of a mix? Feel free to give me your input on that, because I kind of tried to let other people lead when I did this a year ago, and I got the feedback that people really just wanted to hear me talk. So I really want to, give you guys what you're interested in. So let me know if you have any thoughts on that. Melinda says, I want to hear you. Amy says, the mix is good. Shanila says she wants to hear me talk. Belinda says, interested in my process. Colleen says, better to hear me guide. Okay. Rachel says, hear you talk. Mix is good. Okay, so we got like 6 votes for hearing me and 2 votes for a mix. So I'll do most of the talking, and I'll ask for people's input along the way, but I'll go a little bit faster with this next essay. So here's the essay. As a child, I was very timid. In preschool, I would always dread the sound of a bell, because that meant I had to spend recess or lunch alone. Eventually, when I entered kindergarten, I was able to make a couple friends, but it was nothing special. By the time I entered elementary school, my friendship with them was completely cut off, and I thought nothing of it. Throughout elementary school, I never got more than a few friends. So we've clearly established the status quo of the problem. So this is the problem. I was really shy. It's sounding to me like the debate essay. To make it for my lack of friends, I made several imaginary friends. Cool, creativity, imagination. When I say scoring points, more and more I'm interested in what are the cool, interesting things that show values. And this shows a cool, important value. Typically, I'd make up a story behind that friend and how I'm associated with them. So more creativity. I'd spend hours creating absurd stories about how they have superpowers. Typically, they'd have magical powers, because I was a huge fan of the Harry Potter series and other magic shows. It's great. So fantastical stuff. Seeing myself this way made me feel like an outsider. Oh, so it makes things worse. This is raising the stakes. So that's getting not better, but worse. It really affected my confidence and how I looked at myself. I thought that I was inferior to others because I couldn't keep a conversation going. Oh, sad face. My shyness also affected my grades throughout elementary school and middle school. So here's another raising of the stakes moment. And this is giving us, this is raising of the stakes part 2 or 3, grades down. This is also called a repercussion, something that I'm writing about in my book today, a negative effect of this challenge. So the shyness actually affected his grades. He never felt motivated to do well in school since he had no one around to push him. I typically spend most of my time drawing at home instead of doing homework. So drawing is kind of an interesting positive thing, but in the beginning of the school, I joined Boy Scouts. I have a suspicion that this is going to be the inciting incident, so I'm just going to label it. Let's see, does he mention it later? I'll just put a question mark. At first, I didn't want to be a part of it. Okay, this is seeming kind of exactly like the on debate essay. I'm just going to ask, is it too similar to the with debate structure? It's very, very similar. I never took it seriously, but as years went by, it helped me grow out of my shell. I was forced to publicly speak in front of audiences, contact adults I barely knew, and meet an entirely new group of people. I was able to bond with the troop by camping with and going to troop meetings. Boy Scouting has significantly helped me become extroverted. I would suggest more extroverted. So we learned, okay, he's come out of his shell. A ton of things have changed for him. By the time I entered high school, I started making several friends. Having those friends helped me stay focused on school, and my grades drastically improved. I went from having a 3.1 to a 4.0. I always had a small rivalry between my friends to see. Now, I always had a small rivalry between my friends. He didn't say he had any friends, so is this a contradiction? I would just be curious. And what that makes me wonder is if he did actually have friends and he's kind of making friends, or if he just needs to rephrase this and say, I don't know, perhaps rephrase. In short, I thought you didn't have friends. To see who would get the better grade on tests, and I surpassed them the majority of the time. I started dedicating more of my time to studying. So something else might need to go here. Science changed to become my favorite subject, specifically chemistry. A bit random without setup. So we need something to set up science, because here it sort of comes out of nowhere. I know that sounds very directive. I'm just kind of giving advice right now. I was blown away by concepts like carbon dating and organic chemistry. Due to my interest in chemistry, I plan on majoring in chemical engineering. I want to learn how I can apply the concepts of real-life problems and help solve them, like finding a new energy source. Having actual friends meant I didn't need my imaginary ones. But the creativity, okay. So here, you might, I always ask, is the ending surprising or is it inevitable? And it should be both. Is it more surprising or more inevitable? I think you'll agree that it's a little bit more surprising, a bit random. And the way that we fix that is we need more clues earlier in the essay to set up chemistry or chemical engineering. Having actual friends meant I didn't need my imaginary ones, but the creativity didn't go to waste because I applied it to my art. Typically, I spent most of my free time drawing. I'd get so, and this seems like it's going back a little bit when we need to be wrapping it up. I'd get so dedicated to a project that I'd redraw it at least 3 times to make sure that it was perfect. I love asking artists for advice, but I know that criticism will make me a better artist. And then my question for this one again is the ending. So what is my final question? So feel free to type in your thoughts. I'm going to kind of do rapid fire so we can make sure we get through all 6 essays. Rachel's suggestion that we add an example. What made him more extroverted? Yeah, potentially. We might not have too much room to do that in here, but if we were to do that, that would go in here. Oh, there's Alec. Hey, Alec. Good to have you. Started making friends in high school. Sorry if that was unclear. Okay. Because when you said always, I thought you always had a small rivalry between your friends. So it's not always that you developed a rivalry. So it's more like I developed a small rivalry among my friends to see who'd get the better grade. Great. I even developed. So it'll kind of build on that 3.1 to 4.0 thing. Great. Thanks for clarifying that. And sorry, I just said your name, but oh well. I don't think there's anything too hyper-personal. So everyone, feel free to just chime in with thoughts here while I riff on that. So Alex, some things that I like about it. Cool. And I would normally ask you, what do you like about it? But I'm going to just jump in here. So I think it's a really clear structure. I think it's clear that if we can look at the big points of this, and it goes, clear challenge. I was really shy, and then I joined Boy Scouts, and then I came out of my shyness. And if we look at, is it kind of a 1/3, 1/3? As a child, I was shy. So this is status quo / problem. And then turning point is right here. And I'm kind of looking at, again, that 225, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. So it's about 230, which is great. Turning point. So basically, what did you do about it? Yeah, and then, so what? Ending. What did you learn? So in that middle part, we've got Boy Scouts, which led to cool stuff in high school, and this is at about like 164, which is fine. I mean, this is not an exact science. I joined Boy Scouts, and then this kind of brings you out of your shell, and then started making new friends. Grades improved, developed a small rivalry. The thing right now that's a bit random for me is this ending. Because I'm following the story and I'm with it. It's like I said, it's a little bit like the with debate essay, but that's okay. Maybe your story, felt really similar to that essay. What I would say, and you're getting some tips here. Melinda says, how about she's suggesting write new friends for that. That could work. Shanila was saying, how did you make new friends? Just from Boy Scouts or aside from that? That's an interesting question. How could we work in how you developed the friends? Like, what did you do? What were some of the specifics of that? But I think what's most important, if we're moving towards this ending where you want to talk about science, specifically chemistry, and being interested in chemical engineering, right now, this isn't quite set up for me. So what I would say do on your next draft is, so here I'm going to put the action items at the bottom. I would say, action items. Number 1, brainstorm the 3 to 5 qualities that are going to make you an awesome chemical engineer. And you don't have to do that right now, but what these will do, eventually you'll weave these into the essay. 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe there are 5. Let's say there are 4. Okay, so once you've got these, then you can start to sort of weave them in. So let's say one of those is like creativity, and we kind of got that with the drawing thing. Let's see, where was that drawing against the creativity and the imagination? But right now, there's no real clear connection to like I see, I can kind of tangentially see applying concepts to real life problems, but I think that could go deeper in the second part of this paragraph. So I'm actually going to suggest cutting this last paragraph and helping us to connect the dots. So first, brainstorming the qualities, and then two, how can you weave in some of those qualities or make them clearer earlier in the essay? Why? So that when we read chemical engineering, we'll go, oh, totally, okay? And then connect the dots for us at the end. Some good questions to ask. Who do you want to help? And how? These are great conclusion questions, just generally speaking. Who do you want to help and how do you want to help them? Like what interesting problems do you want to solve? They say that the measure of a good life is, are you working on interesting problems? What are your interesting problems that you want to tackle? That can give it a sort of a deeper, some stuff. So essentially, this brainstorming thing is going to give you a lot more to say. So that could change things a lot. And some of the stuff could get, trimmed or cut. It's fine the way it works. Let's see. So I was timid. I got imaginary friends. But that didn't work. It made me feel like an outsider. It's also affected my grades. And I joined Boy Scouts, came out of my shell. My grades went up. Engineering, science. So yeah, so I'm just going to go back and say that's my main note is setting up chemical engineering so that it feels a little bit more inevitable. Give us some clues. This will give us clues. Okay. So those are my thoughts. Now, like any questions or any input from other people. Gosh, I wish we had more time with everybody. Okay, I'm not hearing anything just yet, so let's move on. Okay. Alec asks, should I start mentioning chemistry earlier? I think we need some little science clues earlier, Alec. I wouldn't necessarily say it's definitely chemistry, maybe it's chemistry, because you don't want to give it away, but maybe chemistry is earlier, yeah. Try giving that a shot. See if you can weave that in earlier. Otherwise, it feels a little bit random at the end. It's kind of unexpected, kind of comes out of nowhere. Okay, moving on. So this is from BW. Oh, Amy, one more suggestion. Maybe put something in the talks about what happens in the talks, but what happens in chemical engineering? The talks. Amy, can you clarify what you mean by talks? What happens in chemical engineering? Okay, I'll move on. Amy's going to give you that note, Alec, and I'll read it to you. Now, Amy says, what is it about chemical engineering? Okay, yeah, that would be great, I think, at the end. Okay, next essay. Here we go. BW. Pus oozing from the bloody gauze, velvety white patches forming in a nauseating smell that makes you want to vomit. The bottom of the tongue, or what's left of it, can be viewed clearly from the foot of the bed. The chronic cough with occasional blood, constant wheezing, and unexplained weight loss, all coupled with very unusual reddish, scaly patches of skin. His eyes glare at you while you attempt to speak to him without showing your obvious disdain for the current situation. I've always asked myself who could be so selfish that they wouldn't think of anyone but themselves. How does one become so self-consumed that they disregard the possible end result of their compulsive action? Well, this man was the perfect example of what happens when you're being controlled by a personal desire. My grandfather didn't look at the bigger picture. So at this point, like after a paragraph like that, I really encourage students to right away give us context, like for what we're looking at. Because I'm not, we're kind of lost, and the reader will stay lost for a paragraph, but after that, it feels like we got to know. It's almost like in screenwriting, they'll say you can do about 7 minutes, and then the viewer really wants to know, needs something to ground. So I would encourage something grounding right here. So I'm going to make this note. Can we ground the reader right here? In other words, tell us it's Grandpa, and why is he looking like this? Tell us, Grandpa, and why he's looking like this. Okay. So give us something to hold on to. I'm still trying to figure it out as I'm reading. My grandfather didn't look at the bigger picture. That sounds kind of critical of his grandfather. He didn't think of the future that at least one of his 4 children would have kids of their own. He didn't think of his 5-year-old granddaughter that would have to help feed him through a tube. All he thought about was his desire for that cigarette. Okay, what I'm noticing so far is we're about 192 words in and nothing really about the author. It's like we're kind of in trouble so far. We haven't really learned about why this student is going to contribute something of value to a college campus. And I think we need to pretty early on. Otherwise, it kind of puts the essay in the category of like, this is an essay that's actually about someone else. As a child, you look forward to your grandparents' house because it means a weekend of fun. Well, not for me. I always saw myself wondering if my grandpa would wake up the next morning. At a young age, I learned the importance of self-control and the consequences it holds when lacking. That experience changed my life forever. And I'm not sure what that experience is. Like, I get that something has happened, but I don't get a sense of what that was. Also, just kind of as a tonal note, it's pretty negative so far. So it's kind of like, wah, wah, like in terms of like, and again, we're going to finish the essay and keep going. But so far, I'm kind of feeling a little bit down and feeling like, oh, like this guy's really mad at his grandfather is what I'm getting. And I'm not getting yet like all the beautiful, awesome stuff that's going to make this student a valuable contributor to a college campus. And I'll say that to a student if I'm working with them. I'll be like, I kind of feel down. I feel like you're so awesome and there's some great stuff about you, but I'm just not getting it yet. Not only did I lose my grandfather, lost my grandfather died, but I lost the one thing that held my family together. His death opened the door to deceit, dishonesty, distrust, and dysfunction, my friend. Wow. Okay, so this is big stuff. I'm not sure how it's happened yet, but it's wow, this is huge. I'm just noticing that it's huge. As I grew older, I began to realize my grandfather's death was caused by something more than a personal addiction. I figured out that our family has a history of horrid addictions, from drugs to alcohol to sex. I made up my mind that I don't want to see other children go through what I did. Okay, so in a roundabout way, we've gotten to the family has dealt with addiction, and the student doesn't want to deal with that. So if we had to summarize the essay so far, it's this. My family has a history of horrible addictions, from drugs to alcohol to sex. Another way of writing this essay would be to start with that, and then to say more about that, and it sounds like the very straightforward version. But then, making this vow. So this is the turning point, right? This is the vow. I will do something about this. So I started to study the cause of addiction and who it usually affects. Now we're going, okay, great. It came to my attention that most people who have an addiction have faced something in their life that to them was the final straw. It usually happens when the person's younger. I begin to wonder. So some of these details are so specific that we're getting bogged down a little bit. Because remember, this is what values have you contributed to a college campus? Or could you contribute, I mean. I begin to wonder, what if I could be that one person in a child's life that could change their perspective on things? This curiosity is what has given me the passion that I have for children and the heart to help them. Okay, so do you notice these large paragraphs? Here's what I would ask the students, is what do you want each of these paragraphs to do? And this really puts it on the student to try and identify what the heck each paragraph is attempting to do. I've said this before, but make each paragraph your employee. Okay, so right now, these all paragraphs I think are all going to change. But one way to get a student detached from their writing is like ask, okay, what's the main point of this paragraph? Now, I can tell just from looking at it, there are a lot of main points. And so what that's going to mean, the student's going to have to split it up into smaller paragraphs. And then they'll start to see how the ideas aren't quite connected. Okay, so fun tip of the day, just ask whoever you're working with, or ask yourself, what's the main point of this paragraph? And I can't tell what it is right now, but I can tell that I'm going to want to split this up. So I'm going to go ahead and start splitting up a little bit. So there's some thinking about psychology. I haven't always been able to say that I'm happy, content. I always feeling up. I'm thankful that I've been given into addiction, but the people's heart cries out for them. I find that if someone can get the attention and heart of those who are young, they can change their life forever. This is why I feel that my purpose in life is to be a pediatric surgeon and a pediatric psychiatrist. I feel that there are all so many children who are hurt and neglected, but they have no one to talk to. And I know how it feels when you feel like no one can understand you or no one listens or cares. The feeling of betrayal and the feeling of being unloved is what can and will lead to addiction if not addressed properly. I love children with all my heart, and their childhood experience will ultimately shape the rest of their life. My parents were divorced. You see how it jumps here? When I was 8 years old, and that was the worst experience of my life. Not only did I get a divorce, my sister had to move out of the house and live with my aunt. Okay, now we're back into challenges. So this is why I suggest that a really simple, go to the bottom, a really simple structure that'll help the student is this simple 3-part structure. 1, what challenges did you face? 2, what did you do about it? 3, what did you learn? Okay. So what this will help the student do is to put everything that's in the essay so far into separate boxes. This box, and then this box, and then this box. Okay, and that's kind of the structure that I've looked at with the other two essays, right? This thing happened to me, here's some stuff that I did about it, and here's what it's led me to do. So you can tell, like my parents were divorced when I was 8 years old, this is going to go in the first box. I had no idea what was happening. My purpose in life is going to be a pediatric plastic surgeon, a pediatric psychiatrist. So I'm going to call this box 3, right? And then this is going to go in box 1. And obviously the student isn't going to use all this stuff. I'm going to have the students start over, but they can start to recognize, okay, that this needs to be organized, and how this can be organized is by putting it into these 3 boxes. So that experience, the experience of the divorce, changed my life totally. And the one thing that I always thought was, what's wrong with me? As I grew older, I started to feel that if I wasn't born, my parents would still be together, and they would. They'd be in love again. These thoughts grew stronger and louder in my head. They began to torment me. So all of the stuff, more challenges, box 1, ways I could eliminate myself from this earth. So suicidal thoughts. Maybe that gets mentioned, maybe not. I went through a phase where I felt that everyone hated me and no one cared. And some of the language is really strong here, and I would say, the student won't have to include all this. Again, the student is not going to use this language. I would help the student go back and figure out what happened, what led to what. All of this could be eradicated if I just talked to someone about what I was going through. This is a clear turning point, or it's a clear, sets us up for his future career, his or her future career. Sometimes adults may not take the time to understand or talk to a child about traumatic event. This makes it harder on the child. The hardest thing for me to do is to trust people. I don't know. Thankfully, I got through that, but everyone can't get through it alone. It's my responsibility to help as many children. Okay, so real simple. What did you face? What did you do about it? What did you learn? Possibly, create a timeline for the student's story. So I would just say, sit down with the student and tell me what happened. What happened next? What happened after that? X happened. Then Y. Then Z. Then A. And just track the student's story for him, and then tell it back to him. Here's what I'm hearing. And what you're going to be doing, Belinda, as you're working with the student, is you're going to be making sense of the story in a way that's going to kind of put it into this narrative structure, which is the structure that we've talked about. This simple structure right here, and you can probably help the student with identifying what the boom, the inciting incident was, the moment that could start. You'll make some suggestions about that and leave it up to the student. But I would say help the student just map out one thing happened and then the other. We're not going to have to do too much art with this, meaning, what's going to be most important is just a clear telling of the story. So priority number 1, I'm just going to write here, and this is for you, the counselor, not for the student. Priority number 1, get the student to organize the events clearly. So a clear telling of the story. And if we get to that, and that's all this essay does, that's fine. And that's okay. Because these events are, what will carry this essay is the meaty challenges and what the student did about it and how the student has overcome all these challenges. Do all the challenges have to be there? Not necessarily. But I would say bullet point, what they are. The divorce could be there, and, the addiction, family addiction, that could be there. We don't need every gory detail. We don't need to know what kind of addiction it was. But, priority was to get the students to organize the events clearly. That's really maybe it. A secondary priority, and I don't even, is to tell the story in an interesting way. I think right now the problem is the interesting way is getting in the way of the clear telling of the story. So I would prize, number 1. If the student, it depends on how much you're working with the student too. If you're working with the student for like 3 or 4 sessions, then all I would try and do is just do this. This to me would be a much, and you don't want to dress these things up too much because they're pretty ugly things, Pus oozing from the bloody gauze, lovely white patches forming. Like, I don't, what does that tell me about how that student's going to be a great candidate for college? I don't know. I think I've had too many counselors or admissions officers say like, ooh, don't gross me out, kind of respond to it on the visceral level. So just make sure that each part of this really, really counts. Any other thoughts from other folks before we move on? It's hard to go all the way out to the end of the experience because we don't really know how that next session is going to go, but that's what my next session would be with the student, would just be, let's just do a clear telling. And we're starting all over with this essay, I think. Let me know if you have other questions or thoughts before we move on. Belinda says thanks. That helps your meeting this weekend. Good. Good luck. Cool. Colleen says that was a great example. I'm just curious, Colleen, a great example of what? Okay. Moving on, we got 3 more essays. So the first essay is from a student who will be the valedictorian or salutatorian at private schools, aiming for some elite colleges. Colleen is saying it's a great example of how a student tries really hard to get bogged down. Yeah. Okay. First student, private school, elite colleges. Her writing's good. She completed all her supplements first. We're both feeling uncertain about the essay, which is really common. Second essay, we're trying to include more of the student in it. And third's an athlete. I'm not sure if this is good for UC1. Okay, first one, let's see. Private colleges, is it great for elite colleges? We're probably talking like Ivy League here. Okay. The essay, the lessons we take from failure can be fundamental to later success. Recount the incident or time when you experienced failure. How did it affect you and what did you learn? Okay. Thud, splat, sigh, splat, splat, thud. Over and over my body hits the ground instead of staying on the beam. The night of my determination. And by the way, as I'm reading this, I'm also in my head labeling the big chunks of the essay. I'm like, what is this paragraph doing? Could it be doing it more efficiently? You know, and then so that's kind of what I'm labeling in my head. So far, she's on the balance beam. No matter my determination, I can't correct the crooked nature of my back handspring series. Making 10 of them back onto the surface, I begin on appears an insurmountable task, considering the fact that in the past 30 minutes I hadn't made a single one. I hear my coach yelling at me across the gym as I blow the flyaway hairs out of my face in frustration. Days like these were hardly rare as my gymnastics career came to a close. Finally choosing, cool, so it's not just she's failing with one thing, she's failing in her gymnastics career, so that's kind of big. Not cool as in wow, but like it's cool that she is dealing with something so big in her essay. Finally choosing to leave my lifelong sport of gymnastics after thousands of hours of practice over 10 years was one of the most difficult things I've ever done. I felt like I was losing my identity. Great, so she's giving us a little so what in here, which is really nice. It's nice so what, I'm gonna write here. Raises the stakes. You know, so it's not just quitting gymnastics, it's like losing her identity. I felt like I was failing. How could I start a brand new sport when I was now I felt like I was failing. That kind of goes back, like losing my identity, we get that. I don't think we need this. If the purpose of this line is to like tie it back to the prompt, we get it already. So I think I would cut this line. Sometimes students worry about like, oh, I need to mention the prompt. I don't think she does. And the reason why I cut it is because one of the most difficult things I've ever done, and losing my identity, are like biggest. And then it felt like I was failing is kind of a little bit smaller. So it's like, it's not respecting what feels to me like the progression of like raising the stakes. Like she really raises the stakes and goes really high and then kind of steps back a little bit. So I cut that. Anyway, how could I start a brand new sport when I was a soon-to-be freshman in high school? Now, I felt like I was losing my identity. Feels like it's bigger than this. It feels like there may be a bigger question. Like, who was I? Isn't it bigger than sports is the question I'm going to write here. All I knew was that my passion for gymnastics was gone, making my 30-hour-per-week commitment to it unrealistic. This conviction gave me the bravery to sign up for 3 different school sports as a freshman. Starting from scratch was an unfamiliar concept to me and entirely terrifying. As I started to play tennis, swim, and run track, I realized that I wasn't starting over in the slightest. Gymnastics had given me an athleticism I could apply to practically any sport. I owe my strength, flexibility, agility, balance, and mental toughness all to the sport to which I devoted my childhood. Thanks to these attributes, I was able to have fun and succeed in all the sports I tried. So not very interesting to me. If she had joined all these things and failed at them, that would be interesting to me. But somebody who's already a rock star and is like, hey, I just went over here and was a rock star. So I'm not going to say that to the student, but I'm just wondering, I'm hoping that this is setting up for some deeper sort of failure. Because if somebody is like has kind of a failure and then goes and they're just like, well, I just went over here and I did this and I was awesome, then it doesn't feel like we had to work real hard and it doesn't set up much empathy. We don't tend to connect with perfect people who can just be like, oh, then I went over and played these 3 sports and rocked out. So I would say, can we make this more of a challenge? In other words, are there ways that it was difficult? Did she fail at first in certain ways? And then rather than I'm just going to say conquer 3 mountains at the end of the paragraph. Could we instead show glimmers of hope? In other words, because right now, like the essay could be over. Like I went to these things and it's great and I'm done and I'm happy. So we want to sort of build it, and by building it, I mean let's give some little sense that something got better. So don't jump to the ending yet. This whole experience taught me how essential passion is in my life. passion is a pretty, I'm being really direct and kind of critical, passion is a pretty boring value to center the essay around. So I would say, you know, let's cut that, or let me give her a chance and see where it's going. The key to success and happiness is finding the activities and people about which I'm truly passionate. Continuing to spend so much time in gymnastics would not have allowed me to thrive in high school. Competing in new sports introduced me to other people and expanded my range of skills. High school sports allowed me to form friendships with a wide range of students, from peers to into meeting upperclassmen. If I hadn't changed my focus, I would not have been able to devote enough time to schoolwork. See, everything is awesome now, and we're like wrapping the essay up. But here's the thing: is that we have this awesome thing. I feel like I was losing my identity is an awesome problem. And to solve it so quickly feels like we don't really get to go on the journey of discovery. So I guess what I'm interested in here in these 3 paragraphs, and I'm going to underline them, is could we have a more difficult journey, essentially? More soul searching, more failing, more vulnerability, because it starts off really vulnerably, but then it just kind of like ties it up and makes everything nice. Again, I'm being super critical here because for the sake of time, I would normally do this in a much slower, kinder way. I discovered that, so this is what did she learn? I discovered I make it a point to give 100% to all the activities I pursue in my life. Again, not a very empathetic thing. Like, that's probably true, but it's probably true for many hardworking students. Whether it's extra work from taking AP classes, leading the French club, or setting an example for my teammates as captain of the tennis team, when I choose to participate, I give my all. This mantra truly benefits me and all those around me in a multitude of ways. Yeah, everything is still awesome. So what would be more interesting to me is if she realized that she was giving too much and needed to actually cut back. So I thought that's what this was setting up for, that she joined all these things in order to overcome gymnastics, and she realized, that she had a problem. And I think there's a deeper problem here. And I think that's true for most essays that are kind of on the surface, because I feel like this is kind of on the surface. And there's this, my recommendation here is this so what exercise. And what this exercise does is that it uses nonviolent communication. And I think I sent it to you guys, but I'll email it out to everybody. Check out the so what exercise. What it is it helps a student to look at a problem that they're dealing with as essentially not the actual problem they're dealing with. So this essay is about sports, but it's really not about sports. It's about something deeper for the student. And I don't want to pretend to know what it is, because I need to talk to her, or to him, I should say him, to actually find out what this deeper thing was. But what was the deeper need deep down? What was this deeper need, this drive for success? And having all the success wrapped, one's identity wrapped up in gymnastics, it sounds like he or she didn't have an identity. And then rather than going and getting an identity, instead just basically transfer that lack of identity onto these other 3 sports. Because I don't get the sense of that identity was actually shaped. There's some stuff in here. I mean, I'm being a little harsh. Competing in new sports introduced me to other people, which is great. Expanded my range of skills. But what's lacking for me is a deeper something. And I feel like that's where the kind of the hard work is going to come in. I wouldn't be able to devote enough time to my schoolwork. But this all is kind of on the surface. What is this really about? Who is this person trying to please? What part of themselves? It's the student's a victim of his or her own unrelenting standards, as one of my former students once said about in an essay. And I'm going to underline this because I think this is going to change too. I've realized many situations demand tough decision making. Though change can be terrifying, going outside my comfort zone produced such rewarding results that I'll be willing to take more risks in the future. I know I'll be faced with more difficult choices the rest of my life, but now I have the hindsight to reveal that I have the ability to thrive, to make the best of whatever circumstance, no matter which choice I make. But here's the thing. This wasn't that hard won. And by hard won, I mean he or she didn't have to really work for it. And I'll bet you, actually, the student really did have to work for it. The tennis and the swim and run, that's an incredible achievement. But right now, it's reading as if, and then I just switched over and things are awesome. So, let's see. Colleen comments, seems like the kid didn't really change at all, dedicated to gymnastics to dedicated to other things. Yeah, I agree. That's what I'm getting at. It sort of feels like it's kind of on the surface. So here would be my question, is what is this essay really about? And I know that's a deeper question, but I think, and I forget who sent me this essay. I think Donna did. Donna, I think this essay, I would recommend almost starting from scratch. Don't say that to the student at the start because it'll freak her out or him out. But essentially, this is an essay. This is a smart student, I can tell, who's got some facility with language. But I would keep this. I think this first two paragraphs are good. But then my question is, we're going to work. Maybe we're going to get to tennis, swimming, and running. Is like, let's live in the doldrums a while and figure out, well, what was happening? What was this really? And again, what was this really about? The first thing I'll suggest is going through that so what exercise to identify deeper needs. So a deeper need, or three. Maybe there were three deeper needs. Okay, how did gymnastics not satisfy those? And I would have a suspicion. Did the other sports? I have a suspicion. I'm guessing no. That it took something else. What ultimately did help satisfy that deeper need? It could be a realization. I know this sounds kind of abstract and kind of prophetic, but it sounds like I'm all saying pathetic. It sounds kind of prophetic, but I had this feeling that there was this deeper need that he or she was trying to fulfill, and may honestly actually not have made this realization yet. This could be a realization that happened live in one of your sessions. But I would push for it because I think it's going to give a whole new level of depth to this essay. Because right now, I agree with whoever said it, Colleen, I think, where it's like, I was dedicated to this, and then I became dedicated to this, and I was a rock star then, and now I'm a rock star here. So I think we need to struggle more. So what it's going to look like more. So the new outline will be, I quit gymnastics. I wandered, searching for myself. And I need to find out more from the student, but it might be something either like, I tried X, Y, and Z, meaning those sports, didn't work. Or, it could be, I tried X, not ecstasy. I tried X, sport 1, and didn't work. I tried Y, you see I'm going with this? Sport 2, and it didn't work. And these could be like tiny paragraphs. Tried Z, didn't work. It wasn't until, so this is like rock bottom. It wasn't until this other moment, this is like the big turning point, that I realized all along, this is what was happening for me. That I realized this thing. And then we need 5, and I will do this with my students. This sounds kind of heavy-handed and technical, but it'll make for a more interesting story. And now this might, I also feel kind of dangerous. Like, am I really kind of constructing? Well, no, the student did. Like, are we messing with reality too much? Does it feel like a lie? No, I don't think so. I mean, if the student did participate in all these things, all we're doing is reframing them to see if the student was, and this is only true if the student identifies that there was a deeper need going on all along. And again, that's something that we have to kind of, as counselors, like figure out and see if we can help that student figure out. It wasn't until this other moment that I realized this thing. Okay, so what I did about it. Okay, so another way to think about this is that I quit gymnastics. I lost my identity. And then I wandered searching myself. Here's where you could establish a want. Like, what did the student really want? To, please his dad or her dad, or to, something. And then it wasn't until I realized this thing. Here's where we could realize there's like a deeper need. And then here, what I did about it, pursuing the deeper need. This will give the essay a feeling of depth. And then some kind of ending. It doesn't need to be that, therefore I want to go into X career. We just need to end with something. Amy's asking, is there something specific in the specific sports she chose to pursue? So what that would be, Amy, I would think, would be a sense that she did actually find the thing in sports. And that would be a different outline. That would be like, this happened. Whoops. That would be like, sorry, basically the same opening as before. So I'll just call this outline 2. So let's say the student that you're working with, Donna, insists that sports, she found the thing. I quit gymnastics, lost my identity. I wandered searching myself. Maybe I tried X and Y, 2 sports, but it wasn't until the 3rd sport that I found it. I tried, something, and didn't work. Then I joined, sport number, whatever it is. But the thing is, if the student is like, joining sports 1, 2, and 3, like, it just seems to me, I don't know, it seems to me like that kind of classic story of somebody who's just overworking. And so I feel like there's something deeper. Amy says, listing all those sports sounds like a laundry list. Yeah. So I wonder if it's one sport or if it's something. I mean, I guess that's why, we need more information to find out what it is. And, and I joined sports 1, 2, and 3 and found the answer. Like, it just doesn't seem that realistic to me that we would find it in that sport. I think there's something else. And once you find the thing that's deeper, that's within, not the external thing, but the inner quality, then it manifests itself in outward ways. So I think we need to identify what that inner quality is. So I'm going to delete this outline too, because I have this suspicion that there's something inner that needs to be identified, and then that will manifest itself in outward ways. Any final thoughts on this essay? We've sufficiently picked it apart. One thing I'd say to the student too, Donna, is that we've got time. These students' essay, even if it's the earliest of early decisions, it's still got a couple weeks. So now's a good time to dig deep. Having said that, here's the other thing: is that, like, this is a fine essay. I mean, it's a B essay, and if someone were to read it, they wouldn't get kicked out. So, that's something else to let the student know, just to make them feel better. But I mean, I'm trying to push all my students to write A+ essays until the 11th hour, as I'm sure you are too. Okay, here we go. This is the student who she wants to reveal more of herself. We're going to help her reveal more of herself. Okay, I'm going to go faster because we're almost at time. The phone rings. I already know it's going to be my grandfather on the other end. It's a horrifying story of what's going on right outside his house in Baghdad. Sadly, I'm correct. Another church just on the street's been attacked, and the people inside were taken hostage. My grandparents couldn't go to church or even leave their house and attend their business in fear of being killed by ISIS for being Christian. When they were finally granted permission to come to America, they had to leave everything they had behind and start a new life in a new country. I still can't imagine how hard that must have been. It still is for them. Even though it's always been a part of my people's identity to be brutally killed for our Christian religion, those of us who have made it out of Iraq alive have made the most of what we have and made ourselves successful by valuing education. Living in San Diego, these problems can sometimes seem like they're too far away to have any effect on me, but they do. Before any of this chaos with the current attacks from ISIS began, I took my life and education for granted. However, learning firsthand through cousins of my own age that they wish they could go to school without the fear of being kidnapped or taken hostage makes me value my education that much more. And by the way, as we're reading, anyone feel free to type in comments to either of the comment boxes. Summer before my senior year, I attended a church youth conference in which I learned so much about my culture and religion, being an Assyrian Catholic. It was stressed at the 5-day conference that my generation is pretty much like the last generation that's able to preserve, everything our ancestors built as a nation. I learned the most we who are in America can do is to give back to our communities that accept us. I took this lesson to heart by volunteering at the food bank and becoming senior class president. I've always had an interest in the medical field. My heart set on becoming a pediatrician. One of my cousins and her family are still in Baghdad because she was already 1 year in medical school and didn't want to come to the U.S. and have to start over. She and her family decided to stay back while everyone else moved here. Well, it was a courageous decision. So the decision to stay back while everyone moved here was courageous, for their homes located in an area that's ISIS's main target right now. Her ambition and determination are characteristics I look up to, and it would have pushed me to work hard to improve my GPA. I believe the UC system is a place where I'll be able to fully achieve the goals I've set for myself, and to follow the footsteps of the family members whose courage and values have set such an amazing example for me. Okay, so Don, I'm going to go on what you said about wanting the student, help the student reveal more about herself. I agree. I think that we could find out more about the student. So the first question I'm going to ask her is, what is this essay? Yeah, Colleen says, whatever she says is more about the student. I don't feel like I've learned enough about who she is. So Colleen agrees. I think we're in agreement. The question is, what do we do about it? So first, we got to get on the same page with her. So I would ask the student, what do you feel like this essay reveals about the student? And, one of the things she might say is that she's persecuted for her religion. And if she says that, persecuted for our religion, great, that's one point. Not great, but that's one point. But we're using a lot of real estate, a lot of the budget to set that up, right? So if the essay is, 650 words and 130, we're using almost a fourth of the essay or a fifth of the essay just to make that one point. Now, what that makes me think is that we can better budget our words. But we'll, first we're asking her, what does this reveal? So we'll make a list. She'll make a list of, here are the things that this essay is revealing. Here's a 3-part thing. So 3 questions to ask, and I'm putting this in my book too. 1, what values are currently shown in a really clear way 2, which values are kind of there, but could be more clear. And this, by the way, will work for any essay. And which values aren't there yet, but could be. Now, chances are with this essay, there's not going to be a lot to say about this first one. You know, that it's important to help others and give back. Education is important to me. But these aren't really big, blah, 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 blah. The key questions are going to be which values are kind of there but could be more clear. And especially this one. This is the one I'm most interested in, but we got to brainstorm it. Which values aren't there yet but could be? And this is where I really like to affirm a student and say, you are so awesome and there's so much to you, but right now that's not coming through in your essay. So I'm affirming that the student is actually an interesting person because every student is interesting and fascinating. Every human being is infinitely fascinating. But right now, we're just not getting that. And also, it objectifies the essay. And you know, we can think of the essay as something separate from the student. Rachel asks, how can the student be also a model for others? Yeah, possibly. That's getting a little bit into the details, I think. And you wrote that before I said all this, but I'm trying to frame it kind of in a way that's like we zoom back and look at, okay, we need more content, essentially. We need to put in more stuff because we could tell the student, you know, you need to cut some of this stuff. But I think first, if we start with, you know, here's some extra stuff that we need to work in there, and this is gonna, you know, where do we look to that stuff? We look to her values list. We look to her 21 details list. We look to her. I always love students to do that. You know, what's everything that I want the college to know about me list. You know, that's a really fun exercise, and it could feel random, but there's more stuff to be found out about the student. And I don't know what those things are yet, what those details are, but they're going to be really interesting to find out. What else do I want to say about this? Anything? Any other comments, just from the peanut gallery? I need to grab my charger. So just a 30-second pause. Actually, just go ahead and type in your thoughts. I'm seeing no more thoughts from the peanut gallery. So essentially, we're going back to brainstorming and trying to generate a bunch more material, because once we get all that material, then the student's going to go, wow, I've got a lot of stuff to say, and it's not saying in here at all. So I'm trying to sort of focus on the positive rather than, you know, just critiquing the essay and saying negative things like, well, this essay doesn't reveal much about you. You know, I have that criticism in my brain, but that's not going to help the student write a better essay. So essentially, what we're going to do is generate more content. And then once we've generated the new content, we figure out, okay, well, what's the new structure for the essay? So positive, positive, positive. And I have a feeling that a lot of this is going to change, but it's going to depend on what our new content is, because I'm always trying to figure out how can we get more variety and more depth. And this essay, I think, especially needs more variety, whereas the last essay, I felt like needs more depth and more variety. Okay, here we go, essay 3. This is a sports essay. Any final thoughts? Feel free to type them in on that last essay. My world is everyone else's world. I listen to what has happened to others and how it's made them feel, and from there I can deduce my own thoughts and beliefs. I compile the thoughts and stories and experiences from my friends and coaches and teammates into my own morals and character. I build myself through understanding others, and I've been able to be exposed to so many different. So pretty general, and what this is just going to breeze right past the reader. So take all these abstract thoughts, and I'm going to say start specific. So give me a specific example of this. Draw me in. Right now I'm sort of breezing by. Each week, every practice, sports gives me more time to hear more stories and be taken down a new path with completely new experience. I know what's happening in people's lives. I pay close attention to the current life status of acquaintances, not even just my close friends. Each person's life has an entirely new plot full of its own twists and turns, and getting to hear about them intrigues and interests me. I like to hear every story a person has to offer, not just the climax and resolutions, but the details, to keep tabs. Okay, so I'm trying to identify what is this mainly about here. Yeah, Colleen says, I can't see a story here so far. Yeah, I'm feeling the same way. It's kind of floating in abstract language. So let's keep going. Let's see where it goes. I keep confidences. I listen and I understand how different experiences affect different people and how each of them has different ways of dealing with their varying pain or happiness or conflict. You know, one of the problems I'll say here is that I can't see this. There's nothing visual yet that's really allowing me to. It's almost like there's like a black screen and I'm hearing the voiceover, and I'm still looking for something to like grab onto. I listen and analyze with each new situation becoming part of my own system for when I'm presented with a problem or emotion of any kind. After so many years of running labs and so many hours of practice and tournaments, there are entire days I'm surrounded by people and their distinct thought. Each minute of each practice is a component of my entire being. So this is, a lot of general language like this that sort of, to me, it's a little bit all over the place. Listening to and understanding other people is the gift that sports has given me. Which sport? How has it given me? It's the gift that has become me. I see sports as, so it's like almost like every sentence feels like the concluding sentence of the essay. It's the gift that has become me. I see sports as an opportunity for me to grow, not only in physical endurance, but also a chance for me to grow in character. So if we had like show versus tell, like so far this is like almost all tell. It's because in many years of so many laps that become responsive to other people's feelings. I can predict their reactions by simply applying how they reacted to a similar occasion. I've always been interested in biology, and due to my sensitivity, I know I use many laps worth of people's knowledge, aid for someone becoming a physician's assistant, which I had the quest to begin at the University of California. So I don't know what the student wants to say. So I would start with that question. So what do you want the reader to really know about you? And once we identified 2 or 3 things, I would say, what else? What else? I would say, okay, what would be the best way to show that? Because it could be that the student is in that type D category where he or she doesn't have any difficulties that he or she wants to write about. And, there's some sense, physician's assistant, even doing a type B essay outline where it's like articulating the values that have helped him or her develop the qualities that are going to make him or her great at being a physician's assistant would send us in a particular direction. But I don't want to clamp down on that right at the start. That's kind of like the backup plan. I want to find out, what does the student really want to say? Where's this? What's burning on this heart? What is the student burning to say? And if it's like I have no idea, then we look at the objects list, we look at the 21 details list, and I'm trying to get a sense of that student. If I know the student's personality type, which I always test, I'm looking for what is the heart of this person's type? Is this person a helper? Is this person the leader? Is this person the one who questions authority? How can we demonstrate those core qualities? So essentially, I'm kind of saying I need a lot more information from the student about the student. And that's why when I start with my students, I always have them do 5 different brainstorming exercises: the object, the values, the 21 details, everything I want the colleges to know about me. I actually have them do the activities list and the additional info. So I get 6, and then they're doing a personality test. So I've got 7 different things to draw on. So even if the student's like, I don't know what to write about, I've got a bunch of information. So I'm starting that with students as the pre-work. And those are all available on my website. So so I need to know more information. And we need to decide if we're going to write toward why being a physician's assistant is important. Like I'm going to see how linked that is into the student, or if that student has another passion. And if it's sports, it's tough to write a sports essay, right? It's tough to write. Right now it's about all sports, which is even more general than writing like the tennis or the football essay. So the other question that I would have, in a way that I could maybe help detach the student from writing about sports, is ask, well, what's your extracurricular essay going to be? Because if it's also going to be sports, then, I'd say let's find another topic for this. So I have a feeling that we're going to pick another topic for this, but I have no idea what that is until I get some more info. So sorry, Donna, I can't help more. Are there any questions that you have, or any thoughts from the peanut gallery on what we could do with this? Okay. So feel free to type in thoughts. My thoughts, again, are to just, make sure that you have enough, that you've given that student enough, and I do this with all my students, enough information, enough brainstorming exercises so that we don't have to do all the brainstorming exercises in our sessions together. I've automated almost all the brainstorming with my students so that the brainstorming is actually, playing with the ideas that have already been generated in that pre-work, and then we're kind of, just trying to get creative and go deeper with those. Jan asked, how do I help students go over draft and start over? What if they come back with the same language? Well, so good question, and I deconstruct it. So with this essay, I would ask that, the core question that I ask is, what do we learn about the student? And, chances are that some of this thinking is pretty foggy, and I won't let that student, sometimes look at the essay and I'll be like, what do you remember? Because a great essay, if it's full of visuals, like the list debate essay, which I've talked about a lot, we learn that student's resilient. We learn that student has found her voice. We learn that without even necessarily looking at the looking at the essay, because we've got images. We've watched a movie basically, and we can say things about the person in that movie. We need a movie here, and so I might even say that to my student. But I'll definitely ask him, what do we learn about that? And chances are he's not going to be able to say a lot, you know. And if he says sports are important to him, I'll ask, how do we know that sports are important to him? And it's like, well, and there's going to be some like vague language, and so, you know, vague language is usually vague thinking. And so I'm kind of trying to call the student out in a roundabout way by asking that question: what do we learn about the student? And then I'll ask, you know, what would you like them to know about you? And we'll make a big list of that. And then again, what's the best way to demonstrate all of those things? How can we show all those qualities? Colleen asked, do I ever use the Common App essay topic? I let students pick. You know, I recommend that, you know, the one that I wrote at the top, or describe the world you come from. But honestly, it's not that important to me. You know, if a student writes about failure, yeah, we should, you know, the failure topic, we should definitely see the moment of failure. But, you know, most of my students are writing for that essay 1, which is describe the world you come from, or tell us your story prompt, which is kind of like the topic of your choice. And I'm just helping them to get more values, you know, go deeper, go wider. And I find that some of the Common App prompts, let me just pull them up really quick. Secrets. Screenwriting, here it is. Okay, so for those Common App prompts, let me just look at them really quick. This is the best one because it's the most open to me. Some students have a background, identity, interest, or talent so meaningful they believe their application will be complete without it. This to me is the topic of your choice prompt. The lessons we take from failure can be fundamental to later success. Recount an incident or time when you experienced failure. How did it affect you, and what did you learn from the experience? Can totally work. I don't find that students often have a big failure that's interesting. And it's, you know, and this can be kind of limited to that one experience, whereas this can tell us a lot more, can tell us more about the student's world. So even if the student is writing about a failure, I want to know about how that has changed and rocked their world. Reflecting on the time when you challenged a belief or idea, what prompted you to act? Would you make the same decision again? You know, again, it's focused on one particular thing. I'm kind of against and becoming more against writing about a particular moment, because I think we kind of put all of our eggs in one basket, and it's really hard to do that well. I think I'm becoming more and more a fan of broader, you know, stories that jump around, like the montage, or, you know, that tell an entire life story in brief. And there's conventional wisdom out there, like, don't try to tell your life story. I disagree. I think sometimes you can tell your life story in 650 words, and it can be really interesting and really compelling. Describing a problem you solved or problem you'd like to solve, I guess that could work. A research query. You know, I think these tend to kind of limit, though, and I don't find out a ton about the student's world. I found out how they dealt with one particular thing, which could work. And this is fine. I mean, if you're discussing an accomplishment or an event that marked your transition from childhood to an adulthood, yeah, but I think essentially you're still writing, you know, this story, this moment, this thing that was so interesting to you that's like tell us your story. So Colleen says, I wondered if those questions would get a kid thinking of specific stories. I don't find that I have trouble, you know, my students don't have trouble thinking of stories necessarily. Just because they've got, I don't know why that is. They've got a lot of content that describe the world you come from and how it shapes your dreams and aspirations, feels big enough for everybody. I mean, you know, but it could be that in 2 years I'm like, oh, you need to focus on specific prompts. But I don't know, Colleen, what do you think? Like, you know, what you said those questions could get a kid thinking of specific stories. I see how totally that could help. Well, what do you recommend? You know, she's saying, for example, for this kid who has no story, could these prompts help him? Yeah, that's a great idea. I think that could totally work. You know, I would put the prompts in front of him and say, do any of these speak to you? Do you have a moment that you really changed things or challenged things, or was there a growing up moment? I think that would be a great idea, Colleen. Thank you for that. Other thoughts, final thoughts before we wrap up here. What I'll sometimes do with a student is I'll kind of bullet point what our action items are. For this essay 3, I think the action item is just we're going to just re-brainstorm and try and find a topic, because I don't think it really has a topic yet. And I don't sense that it's the student's deepest story. Colleen says, I don't use the prompts ever, but since I didn't know that kid, I would have used it as a starting point. Cool. I love hearing that you don't use the prompts. I'm curious to hear other folks. Do you use the prompts or do you not use the prompts? Or what prompt do you use? My latest thing that I just hit on last week is especially with the supplements, and I'm gonna write something about this. I don't know if it'll be at this book or the next one, but it's gonna be really empowering to rewrite the prompt so that it's something that you want to write about. Politicians do this all the time. Don't answer the question you were asked, answer the question you want to answer. Now you got to be careful that it's actually still answering the original prompt. But an example would be discuss a moment when you demonstrated leadership. That's kind of a boring prompt, But if you rewrote it to be when was the time when you let your superpowers show? It's oh, okay, my superpowers. What are my superpowers? All right. So my superpowers, Ethan, are listening and being able to parse information and intuit and feel what people are feeling really deeply, really quickly. So these things could be construed as leadership qualities, right? So, but thinking about it in terms of my superpowers is kind of an interesting rewrite. So I'll probably come up with a bunch of examples of that and try and start encouraging my students to rewrite the prompts so that they're super interesting and exciting to them. And for any one prompt, you could write 20 or 30 prompts that could basically answer the same question, but in a way that's more compelling to the student. And it's more empowering too. Again, I don't think that the prompt for the Common App is all that important. I think that you just need to tell a great story, demonstrate a lot of important values and qualities, and that's it, right? And then you got to round it off at the end. So now I'm just kind of riffing. Okay, I was waiting actually to see if there was anybody who had other thoughts or questions here at the end. I love talking about this stuff. As you can tell, I'm kind of a geek for it. And oh, hi Lily, one of my students is on here. I'm glad you could make it. Let's just open it up for, Lily says hi. Any final questions or just sort of little rants, or what's one thing as a counselor that you're dealing with right now and you just want to hear some empathy? Is anybody else dealing with this right now? Any problems or sort of issues? And students, are you anything you're really struggling with that you'd like some support on? Just open mic for a second. And just curious to hear what people are facing, what people are struggling with. I'll be quiet for just 30 seconds so that we won't start dealing with the problems yet until we've got more of them on the page. So just go ahead and write what you're dealing with. Okay. I'm going to talk about these in order here. Melinda says, I have a student who said on writing about his broken thumb, that's all he can come up with after doing all the exercises, how he couldn't play sports because of it. I just think it's such a small topic. He really doesn't go deep at all. There's nothing to get to. So you can say that, Melinda. In other words, you can say, what we're looking for is an umbrella that's going to be big enough to capture all of the complexity of who you are. And I just don't feel like the thumb story is really it. It feels too small. It's like the umbrella is too small. My question would be, is there depth? Sometimes I know it can feel that there's nothing to get to. Gosh, I don't know what to say about that one. Anybody have any ideas for Melinda? How do you help a student who's got such a small topic and is really committed to writing about it? I mean, ultimately, if he wants to write about that, that's what he should write about. And, I would say, is he able to show 5 to 7 values through that? That's a good question for him. Because, some guy once said, and that I'm not some guy, that it's great if you can demonstrate 5 to 7 clear values. And you can look at some of the essays on the site, that these essays are great and they demonstrate, lots of different values in really clear ways. So when he's writing it, Melinda, you could do that 3-part thing, which values are coming through clearly, which aren't yet coming through clearly enough, and which values could be there but aren't there. And if he does that and sees that this broken thumb thing is not actually letting him do what he wants to do, which is express all of his awesomeness, then that might help him sort of detach from that. But again, that everything I want the colleges to know about in the exercise can be helpful. And if you didn't really go deep there, maybe push him on that. What else do you want them to know about you? Rachel says, difficult to have more show than tell. And I'm not exactly sure what you mean there, so Rachel, so I'd love to hear more about that. Belinda says she's having trouble helping students with time management to get the work done, helping them develop a plan, breaking assignments into smaller chunks, and having definite deadlines. Belinda, are you having them do the deadlines, or are you doing the deadlines? Also, I would be curious to know if those are J or P's in terms of their personality type. If those are students who, are students who generally get other things done, or if these are just you just happen to have a lot of slacker students, or if students who tend to procrastinate. I was a slacker student, so I guess I can say that. But one thing I'm doing is I'm having them definitely email me what their assignments, like what they're going to have to do by when. Like, 9 p.m. Wednesday, I will have to do X. And like to send an email to me right then at the end of our session to both of us, and setting a Google Calendar reminder that actually you can set that up so that it will text you. And then I'm putting it on my calendar with like one of my students last year, so that I check in and say, hey, it's 9 p.m. on Wednesday. Where's your so-and-so? So, that's something that worked for me last year. I mean, it worked in the sense that, like, it helped the students become more accountable. The students still waited to the last minute, and that's kind of, that's the lesson that he had to learn. His essays weren't as good as they could have been, and, we both learned a little lesson about detachment. Alec is saying, I'm a little worried about my grammar and vocabulary. I don't think it's good enough. So Alec, if I can say this, is the one who wrote the second essay about being very timid and then joining Boy Scouts. And I just want to ask the group, like, do you feel that he needs to be worried about his grammar and vocabulary? In preschool, I'd always dread the sound of the bell because that meant I had to spend recess or lunch alone. Eventually, when I entered kindergarten, I was able to make a couple friends, but it was nothing special. Not at all, says Melinda. Anybody else agree with Melinda? I agree with Melinda. I don't think you have to worry about it at all, Alec. Just write like you talk. Write like you're talking to a smart friend. You're going to be fine. This is a clear story. It's one of the clearest that we read today, I think. In the beginning of the school, I joined Boy Scouts. Straightforward, clear, simple. Don't get too fancy. Oftentimes, fanciness just gets in the way. Colleen, there's another person, says vocab is great. So, if you needed a little positive affirmation, Alec, you got it. Again, that's why I asked, whose voice is that? Is that your mom? Is that your dad? Is that your English teacher? You're fine. You're an interesting, intelligent human being, and that's coming through fine in this essay. So don't worry about it. Anything you do to try to dress it up is going to make me think that you're trying to show off or be impressive. Not always, but just be you. Jan says, I find helping with narrative structure so much easier than montage. Any tips, especially with focusing lens? All I'll say, Jan, is that it takes a longer time to find a focusing lens. Like, the focusing lens can be, here's a tip. The focusing lens can be what the student wants to major in. So like with this student at the end, he wants to go into, to be a physician's assistant. Well, if we can't find anything, like a session and a half in, we're going to write the physician's assistant essay. And the reason we're going to do that is because it's going to give specific concrete things to montage, like to put in our montage. If that student ends up picking something other than physician's assistant, like down the line, that's okay, because we've written some cool values. We've demonstrated some interesting values. And then, sorry, just one second. We're done in 3 minutes. That's just my wife asking me when we're going to have dinner. I find helping, okay. So with the focusing lens, yeah, like it could just be, what that student wants to do. But also, that sometimes just takes a heck of a long time. I've got a student I've been working with since May, and he still hasn't found his topic. I've got another student that I started working with, and he wrote his main statement in his one draft, and we were like, that's great. We've done some tweaks, and I'm thinking that the next draft is going to be like the almost final draft. So, and that's a student who's not necessarily writing about challenges. He's just writing, some students take longer. So that's why I guess I just want to kind of empathize with that. Rachel's saying, I want to show my qualities, but I don't know how many examples I should put. Rachel, 4 or 5 examples. I think it's like 1 per paragraph, and I don't know that you can do too any more than that. So with whatever you want to study, if you know what you want to study, Rachel's asking, should I have 1 incident or a story that summarizes the qualities and what I've learned? I wouldn't be able to advise generally on that, Rachel, because I don't know what your situation is. Let's see. I'd say probably, though, the story that summarizes the qualities and what you've learned, I don't know. It's tough to say. The 1 incident that's so specific, it better be the one thing that really changed your life. And then you better let us know before that, like what led up to that to make that such a big deal. And after that, like how it changed you. But if you want to think of it really simply, Rachel, just, if you're writing the type A essay or the type C essay with challenges, what are the challenges what were the challenges you faced? What did you do about it? What did you learn? And if it's the type B essay where you want to talk about what career you're going to end up with, then what are the awesome qualities of that career? And how many qualities can you show? I'd say make 1 main quality per paragraph so that it kind of focuses the paragraph. But you'll find, once you start digging into the examples, you'll find that those examples allow you to show other qualities along the way too. So that's just reiterating my process in a nutshell. Belinda's agreeing, by the way, Alec, that your essay is good on vocabulary and grammar. Melinda says, I'm working on having them decide the deadline so they can take ownership. I think it's a great thing to do. It's working pretty well with my students, I'd say, this year. There are certainly students who are slacking, but I'm finding that my relationship to that has changed, Belinda, and I've kind of taken that pressure off of myself. And I know that you might have a different relationship with your students, and you might promise parents that you're going to make those students get it done. But boy, I don't want that pressure, and boy, I don't want to have to be like nagging them. That's not what I feel like I want to get paid to do. I want to get paid to work with students who are motivated, and obviously that can't always be the case. But I want to help students who want to be helped. And again, these are like all controversial phrases that I'm throwing out. Essentially, what I'm saying is, I want students to motivate themselves, and I can prod and encourage, but at some point I just say, hey, these are your deadlines, and it's up to you to meet them. Antoinette says, I know this sounds bad, but how do you work with students who just aren't good writers? Student has a great story, fraternal triplet, but tries too hard with analogies and flowery language. I just highlight everything that's flowery and say simplify. Antoinette, my English teacher wrote on my paper once, obscurantism is obscurantism, which is, kind of like, it was me being like kind of a smart ass with my flowery language, kind of as a joke. But, she just said, how you show your intelligence is through the quality of your ideas, not the way that you dress them up and fancy, like the metaphor is like, if you can be putting the fanciest condiments on the hot dog, but a hot dog is a hot dog. I'm sure somebody said that before, but you got to improve the quality of the hot dog, and so that's kind of a cheesy metaphor, but anyway. Okay, we're at time. It's been an hour and a half. Final thoughts, or checkout, or things you'd like to say, just as we check out here. Colleen says, thank you. Antoinette says, thank you for the webinar. Helpful. Good. I'm glad. I've sometimes thought, you're welcome, Donna. I've sometimes thought about just doing these on a weekly basis, but I've been busy with the book. But this was helpful. Good. And I'm curious to know if you guys have a second to email me back with was there one particular thing that was useful for you? And you don't have to say now, but just maybe send me a quick email, just because it's nice to know what lands, and because some of the things, if they really land for a few people, it's like, oh, maybe that's something that I should include in the book. Rachel asked, can we email you to get further advice about certain parts of our essay? I'm so busy right now, Rachel, so I don't want to say yes to that, because but what I would say is, I can connect you with that Google Doc, because I'm sure there are other students who want help, and there are counselors who are willing to give help. So on that doc, you'll see, so just, if you remember which doc I'm talking about, then just look at that as a spreadsheet. But I would say just email me and I'll send you to that doc if you can't find that spreadsheet. But I'll connect you with somebody who can help, like another student who needs help, and you guys can trade help, or a counselor who's taking students. But yeah, I'm super busy right now, and I'm full with clients, and my prices are higher than they've ever been. So you will get help, but it won't be from me personally, probably. Let's see. Okay, that's all. Thanks so much, y'all. Have an awesome night, and hugs to everyone. Bye-bye.